Welcome back to the Island Docks. Speaking about fire hazards, I mean, we are from the Caribbean where, we might be lighting cockset
Candles.
or candles. Those are things that, this glowing light, children get attracted to and sometimes they can get involved in touching it. You have to be careful that children do not get in contact with anything that's flammable or anything that's on fire because that is how a lot of house fires get started. If you're home around your children and there's a lighted candle in your room, then you should not go by the neighbor and leave them unsupervised.
Definitely.
Those are the minor ways that accidents do happen, and then children get burned or it started a fire. The other thing that I want to mention are choking hazards. I mean, we had initially in the show we spoke about the way to prevent kids from choking when they actually have a piece of food lodged in their throat. Now we're going to talk about preventing that from happening altogether. So some of the things some foods that you may try to avoid are things like peanuts or grapes. Due to the nature of the food, it's just more likely to be stuck in the windpipe of little children.
Yes.
So those types of food you should try to avoid.
It's circular.
Because of the size, yes, it's a circular size, it's pretty mobile, it can get down into their trachea pretty easily and cause them a great degree of respiratory difficulty. So the other thing that I'd like to mention about kids is, regulating that faucet. I spoke about childproofing the stove. You also need to childproof the faucets. Sometimes kids can grab onto the handle and turn on the hot water and really, really burn themselves. Burns is very common to children that come into the emergency room. So I'm just going to talk to you about a few preventative measures that you can take to make sure that your children aren't burned. One of the things is child-proofing that bath or this faucet. Children like to go and turn that knob on and let that water run, and sometimes it can get really, really hot. And in that case, they can suffer a serious burn. So you need to take preventative measures and make sure you child-proof that area. The other thing that you need to be concerned about is when you are feeding that child, always make sure to test the temperature of the formula. Now, how you're going to test it is make sure you test at the back of your hand. The front of your hand, the palmar surface, usually can tolerate a bit more heat than your other parts of your body. So if you really, really want to get a good feel for how hot that formula is, then use the back of your hand. Similarly, when you're testing that bath water to make sure that it's at the adequate temperature, use your elbows. Don't use the palms of your hands because like I said before, it is really, really not a good indicator. This way is a bit more sensitive. And lastly, never ever leave your baby unattended. A little bit of water and you turn away for a few seconds can lead to a disastrous result. So never ever leave your baby unattended. And we have discussed a few pointers for dealing with children inside. Now we're going to talk about children and their safety outside. The first thing that I want to mention is car seats. Now that's a big thing in the Caribbean. A lot of children in the Caribbean are just not placed in car seats. They're placed.
Were you?
No, I was not.
Neither was I.
Right, they were placed on their mommy's lap or their guardian's lap, and that is actually a very, very dangerous thing that can happen.
Why?
There had been an incident where a child was on a mommy's lap and they got into a huge wreck, and the child was not secured, so flew out the windscreen and was lost somewhere. The EMTs that responded to the scene of the accident attended to mommy, attended to daddy, and took them to the hospital. And it's not until 1.5 hours later, when Granny came to the hospital, she asked about the child. Only then they realized that there was a child in that vehicle. By the time they got to that infant, 1.5 hours had elapsed, and the child had passed away. So it's very, very important that you have that child seat in place so that even if the EMT responds, they can be aware that there's an infant involved. Now, having a car seat, you have to have the car seat rear facing in the back seat until the child is 2 years of age.
Yes.
Children up until 4 to 5 years need to have booster seats to ensure that the seat belt comes around their shoulder and
Not
not
their
around their neck,
Mm-hmm.
which in event of an impact can cause them to break their neck or to choke, and then they can die. So in the Caribbean, I mean, it's very common to see little kids riding on their mommy's lap in the front or even being unrestrained in the back. But it's so important to ensure that children are booted in and strapped securely in a car seat. We're going to take a break now, but when we come back, we will have more child safety tips. Stay tuned.